And as you all know, our theme is Innovate to Elevate. And to speak on the same, may I please welcome on stage our moderator, Mr. Srikanth Srinivasan, VP and Head Membership, NASSCOM, to please join us on stage in conversation with Mr. Suresh Kalpathi, CEO, Veranda Learning. Can we please have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome them for an amazing session.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, once again, and thank you, Suresh, for joining us today. Thank you. Appreciate the time to be here with us to share your insights on this occasion. Just before we get to the theme of or the topic of discussion of Innovate to Elevate, I think it may be pertinent to say that the theme of the SME conference has also evolved over the last few years. So, post-pandemic, during the pandemic, we had a small hiatus, and then we started off in 2022. When we started off in 22, we said, it was that period of time when the businesses had to be rethinked, and we then themed it Reimagine Business. And then last year, we kind of moved it ahead and said, now we've reimagined, what else do we do? So then we moved to Learn, Lead, and then Leap. So I guess we have learned, and now we have kind of leapt too. And that's where maybe now the time has come to the theme of innovate further to elevate ourselves to the next orbit. Probably that's how the theme has evolved. And it might also be important to kind of note that as the industry grows today, the data of March 2024, while the industry itself has crossed the 250 billion mark, at the 254 billion mark, and the exports, the domestic business has actually grown over the export business. Export has grown at about 3.8%, 3.3%, but domestic has grown at 5.9%. So with all this, I think, with your own experience, Suresh, I think extensive experience, you've been in the industry for some time, and 80s and 90s was a different kind of innovation, where people were still grappling with a lot of hardware issues, availability, and so on and so forth. And then came the progression towards the internet age of the 2000s, and then I think the 2010s was largely about emerging tech, and now I think it's all artificial intelligence only in the 2020s. So with that, how do you define innovation in today's context, and how do you think it's going to evolve?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's my pleasure to be present for this conference today. Innovation usually, and especially in the context of India or a developing economy, always sets the stage for a disproportionate move away from the norm in terms of growth. True. So if a country or an industry is having, I wouldn't say pedestrian growth, but a very normalized growth, it is those innovations that creates that step up and takes it to the next level. Sometimes these innovations are technology. Sometimes this innovation is also a confluence of many factors. So I would sort of look at the Indian IT industry itself, and I had a chance to be involved in it from the mid-80s. Those days, it was all about people trying to go abroad to study, to probably get some work. The first step up came triggered by Y2K. Because if you sort of hark back to those days, the mid-90s, the same behemoth companies that we find today in the top 10 in Indian IT were really small companies that were trying to find their way and get some foothold. And it was a Y2K, the world was searching for countries that can provide them English-speaking talent that had a certain capability. And with no other option, the world tried India. And this was an experiment at scale. And one of the key factors was the anxiety that Y2K will bring the whole world to a halt. And obviously that did not happen, but what happened was a whole lot of companies from overseas tried Indian tech. True. And at rates that were incredibly different from what it was overseas. And then once Y2K went away, that step up happened. Indian IT started getting used. People said it's because of arbitrage in terms of labor arbitrage, availability of huge amount of English-speaking manpower, what have you. But that was the first step up. I think after that, it's always been incremental. Well, we had lots of technologies like the internet, the web, Java came, and then, everything went on the net, IoT, so many of them, all of them have helped maintain the growth rate, except to fast forward now with AI. And this is the next step up moment for India. And this is purely triggered 80–90% by innovation. India happens to be in a position to take complete advantage of it like never before.
Absolutely.
And this innovation will be tech-driven. And I will briefly talk about some of case studies that we ourselves have experimented with, where we have seen this type of innovation being able to do a step up.
Great, thank you. No, I completely agree, and I think while growth seems to be the need of most organizations today, I think innovation seems to be the single sustainable competitive advantage that one has to build on as an organization. I mean, that's a non-negotiable piece. Now, we all agree that as a tech industry, the single piece of need is all about skill, right? And like in economics, they say the 4 factors of production. I think the single most important factor of production here is going to be skill. So with that, I think, and technology's impact on skill also has been phenomenally high. And you personally also have been working on the edtech space for some time now. And I guess edtech becomes a very natural ally to building more skill in the technology industry. With that, if you can probably delve a little deeper on saying, what are those key changes or innovations or things like that which have made this industry grow further?
I think, well, technology adoption in education has always been there and always growing at a certain pace which was not driven by any external factor. So it kept moving at a very, very slow pace. Yeah. And then came COVID and all of the restrictions that came along with it. That accelerated the adoption of technology into education and all forms of education. And I think to some extent it went overboard in its adoption. Because one of the factors that always happens, and this is a human trait, that we don't change that easily. Human beings as population, we fight to maintain our way of life. We don't change. But COVID brought such an indescribable moment. For people to survive, had to adopt technology in education because it could not stop, not for 2 months, but for 2 years. And that came and drove a whole lot of innovation and a whole slew of tools. Predominantly people talking of an LMS, but beyond that, a whole lot of gamification, points table, tables of toppers, and all of it came through online because of the necessity of the time. True. And now that that has gone away, there is a big swing happening to physical forms of education. You're seeing that in many forms. But that imprint of innovation that was triggered by COVID is here to stay. And that has led to a whole lot of tools, adoptions. And today we find many hybrid models for skill development that uses a lot of the technology that came during those 3-4 defining years is now impregnated into even our physical forms of education in hybrid models.
Great. No, I agree. And I think hybrid is probably here to stay in every form of life, I think, in everything that we do. But again, I think I'd like to kind of deflect a little and say there are some very radical thinking in some sections of society saying that, do we eventually, will we send children to school in some years to come? But do you think that's going to happen? Is that going to happen? Are we going to get away with physical schools and physical education and go only pure online? Will that ever happen?
And again, this is my own thought and submission, but I've seen it resonate with lots of people from different walks of life, like psychologists and all of them. I've always believed that when we send our kids to school, they don't go there to learn physics, chemistry, and math. They actually go there to learn life.
Absolutely.
And, if any of us should just think back on those days, our best friends have been friends from school.
Yes.
Your first fight, your first crush, everything is school. We always remember. So we learn life. And to an extent, that becomes very difficult in a completely online environment. And I always believe that the adoption of online progresses as we age through preschool to school to college, and then we become working professionals. And progressively, you will find that the adoption of online not only makes it easier, but also becomes relevant.
Absolutely.
So if you are a chartered accountant who is the CFO of a fairly large multinational company, and you want to understand what are the changes that came in this year's budget, you would rather attend a 2-year online seminar from where you are, because the 2 hours of time is far, far more than the time you would take to travel to a physical destination. So I don't think the world will go completely online. I don't even think it's good for the society to imagine a world like that. Absolutely. Because I think we'll probably produce a whole lot of misfits who will not fit into community and our way of life.
No, I agree. I think, physically going to a place, you're right, I think is more a social need than just a need for learning something, and also builds in a lot of other things like discipline and things like that, right? I mean, some rigor in what we do, absolutely. Want to kind of step a little ahead and see, I know we talked the need for innovation. We said we need to innovate better, we need to be more realistic, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that brings in customer centricity. Now, obviously, none of these happen so easily as we say. There are multiple challenges. Maybe given that we will have a lot of people here in the audience who may be emerging, growing organizations, if you could delve a little on some of the typical obstacles, challenges that people come across, and how do you overcome them? Maybe that resilience, how do they build that resilience?
I'll probably take a few more minutes and I'll sort of expand when I answer this question. Especially coming from a perspective of an SME. Being a first generation entrepreneur myself and having built companies from scratch, the challenges that one sees as an SME are far more and far more diverse as you are trying to build an organization almost all by yourself, from scratch, bootstrap, and going through the process of building out an organization. And then there are many things that come along. And I think as an SME who has now built strength in your core area of focus, be it in terms of delivering gift articles, and that could be the business that you do, or producing savories, and that could be a business you do. For instance, when somebody talks about AI, and we briefly spoke about it, before we walked in here, is when people talk about AI, and I've seen this in many forums, people like me, and a whole lot of others talk about AI, the sense of urgency, the way it is just taking over the world, and all of that changes. And then, it creates a whole sense of excitement, anticipation, and anxiety, because the next day morning when you go back to your work, you really don't know what to do. Everything's spoken about AI, but what do I do in my business about AI? And that's something that every time there is an innovation that comes, somebody got to go and build a bridge saying, what does it mean to you? How relevant is it to you? For instance, one of the programs we are launching in Veranda is to talk about saying, what are the top 10 essential tools of AI that an SME can use to accelerate every part of your business, be it in terms of customer support, be it in terms of delivery. If you're building some great content videos for SEO, how can you move those things up in productivity by, say, 10x? And these are tools that are available. But how many SMEs will have the time to go investigate, find out, experiment, learn? And that's a bridge that's fairly critical. So every time that there is an innovation that comes, as an association and a body of all companies like NASSCOM itself, some of these bridge programs talking about 10 essential ways of how do I use this innovation to accelerate my own business, and accompanied with some case studies, specific cases, that will be wonderful. And I'll share a couple of cases myself. So one of our businesses is called Edureka. We do a lot of software training. And in many of our other businesses, we have a publication business. So I remember days when we looked at coming out with a book, for instance, on cybersecurity. Typically, it used to take 6 months. We used to get SMEs, and we used to sit with product design people, develop broad, chapters, and then write the content. And, it's a 6 months process. 4 months ago, we experimented using generative AI completely as much as possible to develop content on cybersecurity. And it took end-to-end 6 weeks. End-to-end, 6 weeks. Wow. So 6 months became 6 weeks, and people often in forums like this talk about saying with AI coming, will people lose jobs? What will happen? Retraining of people. That didn't happen. Because what we found was we had gone slow on developing content. Because if it takes me 6 months, there is a cost and there is a revenue potential, and that didn't create economic sense.
Absolutely.
And suddenly when it happens in 6 weeks, that became a whole new economic opportunity that was denied to us before. Yes. And what have we done? We are now increasing the number of publications by 10x. The team size has grown 3 times. We have actually recruited more people now into this because this is an economic value and a business opportunity that didn't exist before AI. That's one example. The second one was, in the early days of the business, we used to provide 24 hours customer support. So people can call at 2 in the morning, clarify doubts. And then we found it was not viable for us to staff 3 shifts because the doubts came coming occasionally, right? Not as many at 2 in the afternoon, like 2 in the morning. And though we actually stopped it because we couldn't sustain it at that price point. Now we are launching an AI-driven robot for our customer support. So the first level of customer support is done through an AI-based robot. And now we have opened up 24 hours customer support. And then that gets escalated to somebody on top. So we have actually now recruited more people. For the same fees, we are now offering 24-hour customer support. So productivity goes up, my offering goes up because of AI, and we are actually recruiting more people.
Wow, okay. Fantastic. This is very good to hear. I mean, you enhanced efficiency, you improved productivity, and at the same time, you probably even, taken your customer from satisfaction to delight at some stage, right? Absolutely. I know we're conscious of time and maybe a few minutes left, and maybe I mean, one thing we see among many SMEs, and you personally focused on one area and you've grown it. Maybe a lot of SMEs kind of, as they, in their hunger for growth, kind of try to pick multiple things, right? They're doing an X area of work, they quickly jump and pick something else, whatever comes their way, because they want to somehow grow. Any message for that kind of a audience here, where, what is the quality versus quantity kind of a discussion, right? Where you want to focus in one area, wait and grow well, or just pick whatever comes your way and kind of, add, but then you don't add expertise in one area.
Specifically, 2 things I would like to highlight in this. And having, been there myself, gone through it, and come out on the other side in one piece, right? So, the first is, and all of us know it, but sometimes, we don't think of it at the right moment in time. The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Especially when you're going through a tough phase that most of us go through in the first 4-5 years as you build out a business. It sort of looks like you come across a colleague, you come across a company, and they seem to be doing well, and you're wondering, what the heck, I'm going through all of this, and it's not happening. It looks so easy.
Yes.
And I could just so easily segue and pivot, do this. Never do it.
Yeah.
Never do it. Nothing in the world is simple. If somebody is saying, it's so simple, it's not really that simple. You want to refocus back to what you are doing. The second one is, as an entrepreneur, building out a small business, getting on to medium, 5 years, 6 years, you always remember that you have only limited number of bullets in your gun. You got to be able to point it all in one direction and shoot, and really hope to God that something finds the mark. Because that's really what we are doing, right? I mean, you start somewhere, you put up great business plan, and by the second week, that business plan is in the trash can, right? I mean, reality hits, everything changes, and you're rebuilding, rechanging, pivoting. With all of that, you really don't want to look at what the other guy is doing. Just focus on what you do. Just remember you got limited bullets left in that gun, and keep pointing in the same direction and shoot. And I'm sure you will find your mark pretty soon.
Thank you, Suresh. I think that was interesting. I think very, very valuable insights. I think very practical insights, I would say. I'm sure the audience also found them useful. If we have the time, can we take, if it's okay for you, can we take one question? Any one question, please? We just have that kind of time. If none, then we will probably close. I guess no. Okay. Thank you very much, Suresh. I'm sure this was very, very insightful for all of us. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suresh Kalpathi, and Srikanth, thank you very much for hosting this discussion. I think if you look at the topic, which is Innovate to Elevate, there were good lessons which I could listen in terms of innovation and obviously how it will elevate your organization. Thank you once again. I would request Srikanth to kindly felicitate Mr. Suresh Kalpathi, please, with a token of appreciation. A round of applause, please. Mr. Kalpathi, sir, if you can just stay back, and Srikanth also, if you can stay back. We heard Sriram, speak about the NASSCOM SME Inspire Awards, and the awards are a great kind of initiative for the NASSCOM SME Council, because that's where we recognize the SMEs across the country through this award. Last year was the first year. And this year will be the second year of giving the awards. The awards session is planned in Delhi next week. However, the council thought that why don't we print a compendium of the last year's award winners and the nominees. And we have done that. I would like you and all the council members present here, Sriram, Maulik, Uma, all the council members, sorry, I can't take everyone's name, but if you can just quickly come on the stage, and we'll request Mr. Suresh Kalpathi and Srikanth also to be here and kindly unveil the compendium in next 1 minute, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for this unveil? Thank you so much. May I request all of you to please be seated?